All right, jurors. Y'all, we didn't even get the jury in the courtroom this morning before the fireworks were already starting. Today is Wednesday, September 3rd, and we just wrapped up day 8 in Donna Adelson's murder trial. Okay, so here's what happened. Apparently there's an officer who the defense spoke to yesterday around lunch who said they may potentially have some information about the case. Well, Attorney Zellner said by the time the defense got to the jail, like before 5 o'clock yesterday, someone with the sheriff's office had talked to the officer. And now this potential witness says it's not in her best interest to speak to the defense. So she'll no longer speak to them. And Zellner wants to know what's going on here and who said something to this witness that made her change her mind. Okay, so the defense talks to the judge about potentially giving this officer a subpoena, which would be the only way to kind of force the issue and have her come testify. But it's unclear what this witness may know or what they were going to testify to, and we may never know because the witness wasn't called. Now, the first two witnesses of the day who were called were attorneys Kristen Adamson and Linda Bailey. Now, Kristen Adamson was Wendy's former family attorney, and Linda Bailey was called as a family law expert. Okay, so Kristen testified about the motions and litigation that she represented Wendy for, including the whole relocation thing to Miami. I am not going to bore y'all with the details here. We've been over all of these issues, all of the custody stuff, all of the family court stuff. We've gone through that. We're not going to get into it again. But it seems like the point of her testimony was to try to convince the jury that this divorce wasn't so bad. Maybe if they can convince the jury it wasn't so bad, then the motive that the prosecution has presented won't make as much sense. And according to Kristen, the divorce and litigation between Dan and Wendy, it wasn't so bad. It was amicable. And even when Wendy was upset that the relocation to Miami was denied, she said she understood. She was resigned to it. No big deal. Everything's fine. Now, basically, everything that Kristen said was kind of the opposite of what everyone else has said and what everybody else has said about the bitterness between Wendy and Dan. And she even said at one point that she didn't think that Donna was really involved in Wendy's proceedings. Which is kind of crazy because, y'all, we've seen the emails. Now, Kristen also seemed to bring up more than once what a great client Wendy was. And she gave plenty of opinions on how she felt about Danny and the filings that he made with the courts. It's not surprising to me that Wendy's attorney may have had some negative opinions on Dan. I mean, Dan accused Wendy of hiding assets and eventually suggested that her attorney, this woman, Kristen, and Wendy should both be disbarred. So maybe this was more personal to her than she cares to admit. I don't know. Y'all let me know what you think. So Kristen is finally done and it's time to call the next witness. But y'all, I am not even kidding. They go to call this witness and they realize that the defense had yet another sequestration violation. I felt like Luis Rivera when he told the attorney, that's twice. That's how I felt. So apparently this next witness, Linda Bailey, asked to sit in on Kristen, the other attorney, asked to sit in on Kristen's testimony. Linda was here to give her expert opinion on the divorce, to say, you know, it wasn't exceptionally contentious, right? Again, this goes toward trying to water down the motive. Now, Linda wanted to sit in on Kristen's testimony, which isn't allowed because that can influence a witness's testimony for when they get up to talk. The defense requested this last week, but the state never agreed to it. But I guess they went ahead and did it anyway. She went ahead and sat in there anyway. And y'all, things got tense in the courtroom. Remember, this is the second day of the defense's case, and this is the second day in a row that they violated the sequestration order. Prosecutor Georgia Kappelman was not happy. She said, I'd like for them to stop violating the rule of sequestration. The rules are in place for a reason. And Judge Everett agreed, and y'all, he was mad.
You may question this witness concerning whether she has in fact tailored her testimony based on being in the courtroom.
Judge, I'm familiar with this witness. I don't think she would do that, but as we know, the rules are in place for a reason.
Oh, absolutely.
Things can happen without us knowing they're happening consciously, so that's why we try to keep these witnesses isolated from each other.
So the judge asked Georgia, what do you want? What's your request for this? And she said they are seeking to exclude the witness since this is the second time that this has happened, and they didn't request anything like that the first time. Defense attorney Zellner reads the exclusion rule, and the judge kind of snapped back quick. Take a look.
To the extent that his testimony differed from what it would have been had he not heard testimony in violation of this rule.
This is why I believe you wanted Ms. Bailey to listen to Ms. Adamson's testimony in the first place.
I'm sorry?
You wanted Ms. Bailey specifically to listen to Ms. Adamson's testimony for a reason.
Our expert requested it, yes.
So the judge brought Linda Bailey in and did a proffer without the jury present. And she said that she had requested to sit in on Kristen's testimony to see if she had her facts right. And she's like, yeah, after seeing Kristen's testimony, I did. She also said her testimony was not impacted by what she heard. She said she'd already heard all of that before. So here's the thing. You can't have a witness hearing other testimony because that will impact what they're testifying to, right? There are some exceptions, but an exception wasn't made here. The judge can technically exclude this witness from testifying, but that could potentially become an appellate issue because the judge has to protect the defendant's right to a fair trial. The judge ended up deciding that she can testify, but the jury will be given an instruction on this. So, in comes Linda Bailey. Now look, I'll be honest, I was already getting frustrated with the first witness, but by the time this one was done, I was downright angry. I guess Linda and Kristen went to law school together. They both said the same law school and they've known each other for many years. Linda reviewed the divorce file and texts between Dan and Wendy and emails between Donna and Wendy and some other texts between the family members. And she also talked to Kristen for about an hour about this. Now, I understand that these two witnesses are brought in for a specific purpose, to give opinions to the jury about the divorce not being so contentious. But I feel like the way they went about this and the way it all went down, y'all, it was hard to watch. I just feel like there could have been a better way. Linda, like her pal Kristen, said a bunch of stuff on the stand about how the divorce wasn't so bad. And she said Donna wasn't over involved, and she agrees with everything Kristen said, even though she's not supposed to be listening to Kristen's testimony. She brought it up all the time, like, yeah, what Kristen said. Okay, fine. That's not what I've seen, though, based on the communication and the court filings that have been presented. But okay, opinions can be different, right? That's why there's 12 jurors instead of 1. But the time when things started to get really hard for me to watch was when this expert began to insult Dan Markel. Not only does she insult him, but she actually even insults him while defending the derogatory name that the Adelsons called him. Take a look.
In the emails that you reviewed, did you see my client's use of the nickname Gibbers to refer to Mr. Markel?
I did.
Did you find that especially provocative?
No. I mean, gibbers means someone who speaks gibberish. And if you look at Mr. Markel's motions and memorandums and responses he filed in this case, it was somewhat applicable. He was very verbose. If you looked at his writings as a complete layperson, they may at first glance seem somewhat intimidating, but when you broke them down paragraph by paragraph, they were inconsistent. They didn't make sense. They referred to, in multiple situations, he was seeking enforcement of things that were not court ordered, even afterwards in the February 2014 timeframe. So he was very wordy.
Now, this isn't a one-time thing either. It continues during the vast majority of the witness's testimony. But even after all of that, she still says that all of this was amicable. I just don't see that. And just when I was at the point where I couldn't really watch anymore, cross-examination begins. And y'all, Georgia gets up and says exactly what I think most of us were thinking.
And why would your opinion about whether it was a highly contentious custody case matter?
Well, that's for somebody else to decide. I mean, I've done 2,000 cases, or give or take 100 on each side, and I think I have a pretty good judge of where this falls as far as contentiousness.
Sure, but you're somebody that has vast experience with a ton of divorces, right?
Sure.
The parties only have experience with one divorce, right?
I don't know how many they have experience with,
So
but
isn't
sure.
the contentiousness in the eye of the beholder, in the sense that to you it might not seem like a big deal, but to the parties it might be the most important thing in the whole wide world? Do you
Well, that's
agree
one
with
reason-
that?
So here's my thought process on this, and I feel really strongly about this part. An attorney who looks at a binder isn't going to be able to give the jury any insight into how emotional the people are who are actually involved. I don't feel like you can give an expert opinion on what's considered contentious to these people because you've seen something that you thought was comparatively more contentious. Dan and Wendy had nothing to compare it to. They didn't have all these other divorces where they could say, oh yeah, this was the easiest, this was the worst. And these are their kids they're talking about. This is time with their children. Of course, this is emotional for them. Divorce is already hard. And when you throw in custody and parenting time, of course, there's going to be emotions. But here's the thing. I feel like these two witnesses may end up having the opposite impact on the jury. If I'm a juror, I'm probably going to feel kind of mad about the way that they're speaking about the victim. And I'm probably going to be thinking, well, if these ladies think the motions from Dan were so inflammatory, then wouldn't that actually support the state's theory? Let's say, hypothetically, Dan was a total jerk in the filings, just completely out of line. Wouldn't that just mean that that's more likely to elicit a stronger response from the Adelsons? I don't know. Y'all let me know what you think, because this entire testimony during the live stream today was a huge, huge topic in chat. Everybody was very, very opinionated about it. So let me know what y'all think, because I really want to know. How did you take that testimony? Okay, so right before we broke for lunch, after the jury was sent out, we had some drama in the courtroom again. Zellner said that while witnesses were testifying, there was something happening over his shoulder. Take a look at the clip of what he says.
I'm still hearing reactions from the gallery over my right shoulder during witness testimony. I heard it again after the court, cautioned the gallery again. I don't know what steps the court, needs to take in order for that to stop, but the fact remains that they're doing this in front of the jury, could have an impact on the jury, and it could impact my client's right to a fair trial.
Now, the bailiff looks genuinely confused when Zellner talks about hearing something over his shoulder. And that kind of makes me wonder, like, what was happening? Is it a lot? Is it a little? Or are we being dramatic? So then they come back from lunch. More drama. The judge told the defense this morning that he would need Donna's decision on whether or not she would be testifying by lunch. And we even had an extended lunch break today so that they could discuss it. So after lunch, he asks for her decision. And the defense says they still aren't ready to answer. The judge doesn't seem happy about this answer.
But there has been time pre-trial to prepare for this moment. There's been time during trial, and specifically we recessed court early for you to address any issues of witnesses or whether your client would testify.
So he agrees for the 5 more minutes, and then Zellner brings up the gallery thing again, and he says he's concerned about the peanut gallery. What? The peanut gallery? Take a look.
And although the proceedings are public, that has not stopped the peanut gallery from their comments and laughter. We are respectfully requesting that the court here allow Ms. Adelson to participate at sidebar.
Now, at this point, Judge Everett's patience are wearing thin. Zellner asked for a sidebar, and the judge was like, all right, but it's not going to be a long one. Donna still isn't ready to give an answer. We still don't know if she's going to testify. So, again, We wait. Now, after that's all over, we see the third attorney of the day. This is Donna's former attorney, Marisol Descalzo. She was Donna's attorney at the time that Charlie was convicted, and she testified that when Charlie was convicted, Donna made some statements about ending her own life because she was distraught. She said that she talked to Donna about a vacation, but not necessarily fleeing the jurisdiction. And she said at the time, there were no warrants or travel restrictions for Donna. She said she did ask Georgia Kappelman about whether or not Donna could self-surrender if a warrant did come out for her, but she said Georgia didn't commit to that. So basically she told Donna it may be a possibility, but I don't know. It's not guaranteed. Now, next up is a very brief witness, Sarah Newhouse. She was Wendy's victim advocate after Dan was shot. Sarah was actually in the room when Wendy placed the call to Donna to tell her about what happened. This is all during her law enforcement interview. Now, there's a recording of the meeting, so that interaction is actually caught on camera. And even though it's not on speakerphone, I guess you can kind of hear Donna on the phone. Now, the state asks that a comment from the advocate in that video is removed from the recording before it's given to the jurors. Basically, the advocate says something to Wendy about how she did a great job after she hangs up. But while Georgia may not have wanted that comment in, she did want to bring up another comment. When Wendy hung up the phone after calling Donna, she said, "Well, that went well." So Georgia asked this lady about it and asked her if she heard that. And the defense immediately objected, and the question was struck from the record, but she got it in there. Also interesting, when she hung up the phone, she said something about how her parents sound surprised when she told them about Danny. So she's like, so that's good. Okay. Don't be suspicious. All right, so now these other witnesses are done, right? They've given Donna more time to make her decision, and the time has come. Donna has to tell the judge whether or not she's going to testify. So once again, the defense says they are not prepared to give an answer. And the judge is like, you have to. You're out of moments. You have to. Y'all, the judge addresses the defense, telling them they're out of time. And it seems like they're like completely ignoring him while they continue to talk. Take a look.
Ms. Fulford, Mrs. Adelson, the extra time that you've been provided, that has come to a conclusion. We are not finished with the colloquy quite yet. I am not talking for the sake of talking. Before we have to move into any contempt, we do need to move on.
I think the threat of contempt got them ready to talk. She's out of time. Donna finally gives her answer on whether or not she's going to testify. We are all like holding our breath, waiting on the answer. And here's what she says.
Mrs. Adamson, the question remains, as it relates to your right to remain silent and your right to testify, what is your decision concerning these two rights?
This time I don't want to testify.
Very well.
I'm actually disappointed because I was kind of looking forward to hearing what she had to say, but that's it. So with that, the defense rests. Now, the jury was dismissed for the day. They will return tomorrow for closing arguments and jury instructions. The attorneys stayed this afternoon with the judge to go over jury instructions, and they actually agreed on a stipulation that was interesting. They agreed on a stipulation that Patricia Byrd was never on the defense witness list. Now, here's why this is interesting. Patricia Byrd is that jailhouse informant, and they talked about her yesterday during the testimony with the two private investigators. So the private investigator, Eddie Varnes, who took the stand, Sarah Dugan was doing the cross-examination of him, and she basically asked him, look, if this informant had information that was good for the defense, why didn't they add her to the witness list? So when Zellner got up on redirect, he kind of sounded like angry about it or frustrated. He was saying something like, well, contrary to what the prosecution said, Would it surprise you that she was on the witness list prior to September 2024? But turns out Dugan was right. Patricia Byrd was never on there. And they agreed to a stipulation to the jury to tell them, oops, she was never on the witness list. So that's it, y'all. 8 days of evidence and testimony, and it will be in the hands of the jury tomorrow on day 9. So what do y'all think? Did the state prove their case, or did the defense raise reasonable doubt? Let me know in comments and give me your predictions. I also want to know your predictions for how long deliberations will take. Charlie's trial, I was there for that. It took about 3 hours. So do you think that this one will be more? Do you think it'll be less? Let me know. Tomorrow is the biggest day of trial yet, and I will be here for every moment of it starting at 8:30 a.m. tomorrow morning. So make sure you subscribe, turn on your notifications, and I will see y'all live tomorrow morning right here on Crime Junkie Jury.